Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talking Numbers, a very special Talking Numbers. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Paul Jansz, and I have the pleasure of just having some really, really nice chats with some great people in our accounting industry. Today is no different. Today I'm chatting with Aly Garrett. Aly, thank you for joining us for our 2021 series from All In Advisory. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Always great to be on.
Yeah, it is good. It's always good to, and then we're doing this a little bit different this time. We're using a little bit of video as well. So to all of you that can actually see this as well, welcome to actually seeing me and maybe seeing Aly, because usually it's just over our MP4. If you're listening to it, I apologise that you can't see us.
Changing it up, I love it.
Exactly. Now, today we're going to talk about a really good subject, because a few weeks ago on our Chewing the Accounting Fat show, we were talking about growth and engagement. And I think one of the great things about that show was great because it helped to visualize a lot of how people can what's the image that we're creating for the outside person looking in.
Yeah.
That's probably the angle that I want to take today, because I know you've worked really hard on your brand. So
Yes.
you delve into things like brand perception. So we're gonna, and I also want to talk about your story, because I know you put together what's called This Is My Story. So we want to go into a little bit of the detail about that and share with all of our listeners the great things that you've been doing, and hopefully they can start to learn as well, which I think would be pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share away, and hopefully there's some gold in there for some people.
Exactly right. So let's talk with brand. So what does brand mean to you?
Your brand is really your identity. It's what you stand for. It's who you are. And a lot of us, we all have a brand. It's just some of that may be more organic than what you actually realize. Whereas when we started All In October 18, we were really conscious about what we wanted to portray externally, but also what we wanted to live internally. And so it had to be authentic to us. And so when we developed our brand, we really wanted it to be around empowerment, around communication, around being open and friendly and relational. And so we make sure that every single thing that we do is aligned with our brand, but it's really who you are, what your identity is. And we all have one, whether you like it or not.
And did you run through a process with I'll call it an agency, or is that something that did you learn, or did you know that?
Do you know, I worked in the Big Four at Deloitte, and I learned an enormous amount around brand and marketing. And the one thing that always resonated with me was the marketing director at the time said to me, Aly, what makes you stand out from the person next to you, from the accountant next to you? Because you may all deliver the same product or the same service, but there needs to be something that you stand for. And so when we started All In, we were really conscious about working out who we were and what our target clients were going to be. So we didn't necessarily get external help, but it's something that I've always been really conscious about, especially now in the social age. It's really important that you're controlling your brand and you're controlling your identity and you're controlling the communications around that. So I think, it's always good if it's an area that you just don't have any understanding of, to seek support. There are so many people out there that can help. I know Little Creative is doing some amazing work in the accounting space at the moment, and there's so many others that can help. We had a client who helped us with some videos, etc. So always get the support that you need. But I think even in the early stages, if you identify what your why is and your vision and your mission, and then start to build a marketing plan out around that, and just being really conscious of what that is, and then communicating it internally and externally, it's a really good start, because we all kind of know who we are and what we want to be. And if you specialize, then that makes it a lot easier as well. Yes. Specialization for us has actually been really, really helpful to find a key message, find a laneway and stick to it. And so you'll find when we go out to socials, it's usually around cloud, tourism, and hospitality, and we just stick with that consistent message.
And you mentioned some really important stuff there, which is great. So I'm just going to stop, pause, and go back a little bit. So you spoke about the why, which I think is really important. And for those of you that, I shouldn't say this, but I probably will, that may have been under a rock and not quite sure who Simon Sinek is.
Yes, the Golden Circle.
Yeah, go and do a
Yeah.
quick little Google search for Simon Sinek's Why. I think it was something he released maybe in the 1990s, I'll go and say.
Yeah, I think it was in the late 1990s. And he speaks about the what and the how and the why, but the power is in the why. And when you engage with why you're doing something, it brings that purpose, it brings that passion.
Spot on. So there's a golden nugget there that talks about, go and have a look at that. And I think, we've got so much we can learn. And I've watched that so many times from Simon. It's brilliant because he also talks about how people sell the what, but people buy the why.
Exactly right. And so when we go out to external and when we go internal, we always lead with the why. It's really powerful and really engaging.
So let's talk about that for a second. So we talk about brand perception, and this is probably a great thing for all our listeners out there in terms of just how we're perceived again, I suppose, to the external eye, because this is an important one. Because nowadays, with all these things everywhere, the first thing someone says, "Oh, why don't you go and look at so and so?" Bang! What do? We do a Google search, or we say, "Siri, can you find me all in advisory?" And bang, up pops your page. How important is that from and I think you mentioned people before as well, from even potential employees looking at you now and differentiating yourself?
It's a really powerful tool for employers if you really want to bring the right people on board. Those people that are really engaged on the socials tend to be very forward thinking. Those are the people that we want to work for us. They're kind of knocking on our door, and it's because of what we're presenting externally. But there are a lot of parts of this puzzle that you kind of need to pull together. So yes, you need to understand your why, and then kind of build the brand around that. But you need to have a great website. It doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles, but it needs to be a landing page. It needs to provide content. It needs to deliver your story. So you need to find out what your story is and try and deliver it through that. And you'll notice on our website, we actually have a lot of video. Video is very engaging. It doesn't actually cost that much anymore, but it's something different. It's people watch it. It's 30-minute, 1-minute grabs. Very, very powerful, but it controls your narrative. But not only that, we make sure that we have a social calendar. So we are active on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. We have won clients through each and every one of those avenues, not just small clients, actually really good ones. And what we do there is it's about telling our story, controlling the narrative, pushing out our brand. And we just make sure that we're consistent with that. We actually have a social calendar at the back end of that. And we do all of that internally. It is all organic.
Okay. Yeah, there's a few things there. And I think for some of our firms watching this, they may not know where to start. And I think you mentioned a really good one there in terms of video. So if you look at nowadays, the amount of sites that are just image only, there's so much research out there that, again, if you switch that to being video focused, that also helps with SEO. Little things like Google reviews helps with SEO. Just only the little things. So if you're out there thinking, where do you start? I'm going to ask you very soon for all of our listeners out there, what would you suggest as a starting point, Aly? But think about just those little things. If you Google searched your site right now and you were looking at it and you saw there were images popping up as opposed to, could I replace those with videos? There's one. Go and look at I think when you do a Google search, as opposed to putting it into the URL, your firm or your business will come up on the side. Have a look at how many Google reviews you have. Do you have one? Do you have none? Or do you have 10? Okay. And again, this is our next layer of the old testimonial and having it in a written format. Go and put it into, ask clients to put it into a Google review, because that's where, again, SEO, it will help.
And the power of a client selling your services rather than yours, it's incredibly powerful. And in fact, on our website, go have a look. We actually have a client testimonial page. Now we don't spend money on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. We don't boost posts. We don't do Google AdWords. Okay. But what we do is we do spend money on video. And so we've got so what we do is we have a target client. It's in tourism, it's cloud, it's progressive, and it's medium size. We've picked all of those clients that fit in that genre and said, would you do a client testimonial on video for us? And we've got a client that helps us with that, Deconstruct Digital, but there's lots of people that do video, and it's actually quite cheap in comparison to the hits that you get on it. And we ask them 3 simple questions, and then we develop this testimonial from that. So have a look at those client testimonial videos. The amount of clients that have come in that have seen those videos and they're like, oh, we saw you work with this person, you delivered this service, they said this about you. Incredibly powerful. We then use that not only on the website, we then use that in our social calendar through sharing through all of our socials, and then we also use that in our newsletters and promoting our clients, promoting community. So it might be, say, $1,000. We do $1,000 for 2 videos. The content and the hit rate and the share rate that we get on that is massive, and we've just hit our target market.
Very true, very true. So because you also spoke about specialization, and I know that you do specialize in those industries that you mentioned. What advice would you say to firms that are watching this from a starting point, that have may looked at your site, looked at theirs, they think there's a lot of cost involved? That's usually the stumbling block, even sort of like...
Can I tell you, we developed our own website through Wix. We haven't spent any money on development, and I'm an accountant. What I did though was, one of the girls that worked with us was really quite tech savvy and just really liked doing that type of stuff. So we just gave her an idea and just made sure we had great headshots and a few videos, and she kind of developed it. So, but what I would say as a starting point is this: work out what you stand for, number one, and then work out if you specialize what that's going to be, because then you can start to build content and work out what your client target is, because then you can build everything around that. And very important, just to have a website at least. And if you don't want to cross all socials, pick one where most of your target clients are going to be, and that's usually either a LinkedIn for professional services or a Facebook for more retail type stuff. Yep. Pick one, and then start to develop a social calendar around that. And that social calendar doesn't need to mean that you have to develop all this content for it. So what I do is I develop one piece of content and share that across multiple platforms and use it. So I might do a video that then I transform into an infographic, that I then transform into a blog, that I then transform into Q&As. So, you know, lots of content. So I'll develop one piece of content, and then I'll share that over a period of time. I'll share third-party content. Yep. I'll do stories around my staff. I'll do things like Q&As, lots of different things that you can kind of develop, but build that consistent approach. You know, maybe putting 2 to 3 posts on a week, maybe doing it like the way that I do it is we have a social calendar where we say, this is the month, this is our topic for the month. Mm-hmm. And then, for instance, Xero, great content. Get onto their website, get all the Xero content and start sharing it. Yes. Get Q&As from that content. It's there. And that's what we do a lot. So we'll actually look at all the tech suppliers, look at the specializations and say, what content can we use? Things like due dates, things that pop up all the time. Hey guys, get your stuff in. So anything that you would want to communicate out with people, we just put that out to socials. And then the stuff that gets a lot of hit rates is sharing about who we are, sharing about our staff and what social things we've done or what things that they like doing. So just find one thing and just find a consistent pattern and then deliver it consistently.
Yeah, good. And this is a classic example, again, for everyone listening to this. We're doing a video, which will then be gone into an MP4 for audio, and then it will be transcribed into a blog. So we've got one, let's call it 30-minute session, which isn't taking a lot of our time, but we probably know what we're talking about, which helps. And then we've turned that into 3 lots of content, and that's what we're talking about. So there's a classic example of the sorts of things that you can do quite easily. We're using Zoom right now. It's free. Everything is there. So I suppose to all of you listening to this, try not to use time or cost as an excuse. That's probably one of the key things, because if you want to increase the brand, and people buy from people that they like and can see and engage with. Yeah. And that's another key message. You know, we're talking about engagement again the other day. You engage with people. You don't engage with machines. You buy from people. You don't buy from machines. So think about that in the back of your mind. And the other thing I just wanted to touch on as well, Usually I would write things down, but obviously being on video, I'm not writing things down.
Go back to it.
Yeah. You spoke about Wix. Now, I've also done that myself. You guys are out there considering, oh, my website's old, I've had this for so long. And you know what Wix does? You can design your own, or you can take up templates in Wix for a very, very minimal cost. I reckon you'd build everything for, including your hosting costs, for maybe $500. It is next to nothing, and it's clever. And you're right, you don't need all the bells and whistles. You just need something simple, professional. The images they give you, you can upload videos, you can put your logo in there, you can choose your colors. Go and have a look and have a bit of a play would be my recommendation as well.
And that's what we did. And what you need to think about it, it's just a landing page for content. So if a client was going to come in, what would you want to tell them? What would you want to try and sell them on? What's your why? Delivering all of those things. What do clients commonly ask you? Just putting all of those types of things on the website will help you to start engaging people. It's really just a landing page. It doesn't need to be anything more than that. And because we do it ourselves, we can update it regularly. It's not that difficult. We also use Wix to send out newsletters to clients for our new client introduction forms. So we use Wix really for our marketing, or our MailChimp, I guess. But it's a really great tool. It's really cheap and it's effective.
And that's the key thing at the moment. I think a lot of people would probably get scared off sometimes. Oh, it's $5,000 or a $10,000 site, and it's actually the opposite to that. So if you're in that situation,
I mean, and you can do that if that's what you want to do. You can, and you can find people to do that for you if you're really uncomfortable with it. I know people that can get a website for $2. I know people that can get it for $10. Yep. It just has to be something that you feel comfortable with.
Yep, agree. Let's talk about, you created a pretty powerful video. It's called This Is My Story. Tell me about why you felt it was really important to release something like that.
Well, video is really powerful, and I mentioned that before. And This Is My Story is actually, I've been in the profession for about 25 years, and it was around the time that we just had International Women's Day. Practice Ignition had just announced their top 50 women in accounting. We'd had that kind of Me Too movement, yes. And I was feeling incredibly emotive about my own experiences, and it brought up a lot of stuff for me. So I actually felt like, well, if I'm feeling this way, then a lot of other people might be. And so I decided to develop, and I built it myself through Canva, of all things, a video called This Is My Story, which is just a really brief little blip in my career around some of the moments in my career where I've had difficulties being a woman and progressing and moving forward. And so I really wanted to share my story because I think there's incredible power behind everybody sharing their own stories and being brave enough to do so, because it inspires and helps other people. You know, it's very hard to be what we cannot see. Yes. And I feel like I've been incredibly fortunate in, I guess, where we currently are at All In, and having lots of opportunities to share our story. And that's really what I wanted to do, was to share just a little story of mine to help others, but in a video format, because I knew that would actually be incredibly powerful. And the reach shocked me, to be honest. The reach that I had on that had thousands of views. And that wouldn't normally happen on a normal post. And I had lots of people actually engaging with me through private messages and phone calls after that, just saying, thank you so much for sharing your story. But what I took from that was, each of us has a story, every single one of us. And if we're bold enough to share that and to shed light and to share the strategies that we used to move forward, then that's going to help all of us. And so that really is what that little story was about.
Yeah, good. And you mentioned Canva. You did that all on Canva. So
yeah. In a weekend.
Aussie startup success, amazing story.
We just used, you know what? People would be shocked that we literally don't spend money. Everything is really organic. That's just who we are. And you know what? Sometimes we did try and get an external person to help us with socials, and we just lost who we were. We lost our identity. And so we took it back really quickly. it works for us. And we use things like Hootsuite, for instance, to help us push out to all the social platforms. We use Canva for all of our graphics and branding, and Wix, as I said before. So we use stuff that's already there, already available, and it's actually really easy to use. You don't need a degree. I've never done marketing. I've never done a tech degree. I've never done anything like that. But if I can, I know that most people can.
I sort of agree. I challenged myself to do something on Wix not long ago, and I thought to myself, you know what, old dog, new tricks.
Yeah.
If we can do it, we're not the 22-year-old that's coming through that goes, oh, this is easy. I reckon my kids are better at this, So
yeah, same.
It's so you can sort of learn new skills. So if you are out there and you're not sure of what to do, start at looking at these sorts of things, and just you can learn new things, and it takes you into a new space, I think, which I think is quite empowering.
Yeah. And you know what? There's lots of accounting firms now that are really getting a grasp on those socials. Check them out.
Yeah.
Like the ones I used to check out were like Nat Lennon, Two Sides, Andrew Vanderbeek, Illuminate, Lillette, All Accounts. Just check out what they're doing, what they're sharing. Now, don't copy. You have to be yourself, but look at the types of things that they're doing and put your own identity and brand into that. And it's amazing what can come out from that.
Yeah, I agree. Now, you mentioned you don't spend a lot, but in terms of measurement and probably that activity, how do you go about measuring that? Because obviously, I'm pretty sure we're going to have a lot of blue brain people on here. So thinking about the numbers and the analytics side of it, is that something you do?
Yeah, so look, I guess it's a two-pronged strategy for us. Brand is actually this long-term organic thing that you don't necessarily see a return on immediately, but there are campaigns that we might run, for instance, around a zero health check or tax planning, and we'll actually count the number of leads, the number of views, shares, etc., that we get from that. Also the number of videos that we've put out. Obviously we spend money on those videos, the number of clients that have come in from that. So we look at the clients coming in that directly relate to that particular video. We'll ask them, where did you come from? And they usually tell us. And that gives us a guide as to, okay, well, we've spent this much money, we've got this much money back. Now I can tell you, a $500 video has returned me nearly $50,000 in fees. Would I do that again? 100%. So, I think it's really about being conscious. Okay, so yes, I've spent money on that, and then having to follow through and saying, well, where was that reach? How do I get the feedback on that? And that for us is clients coming in, asking where they've come from, or the engagement levels on that particular post. So branding, I kind of hive off to the side, but if you're running a campaign on something, I will look at how much we spent versus what we get back. But I think the return is usually $1 spent for $5 return on sales and marketing in my type of field.
Yep. And like I said, you do that every day of the week if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think when you start to look at how much am I spending versus how much am I getting back?
Yes.
And there's this organic story here. Like at one point, in July to December last year, we were winning one client a day. Now, they weren't just little clients. It's really hard at that point to work out, well, where are they coming from? We kind of lost a bit of track, and we actually scaled things back a little bit because it was growing too quickly. But what a great news story, right? And that was literally just from socials. People were just, oh, I heard about you, saw that, did that. Crazy.
That is crazy. So you're big with social. So what are the ones that obviously LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. So what LinkedIn for us is more around networking, connections, and professional space. So we won't put all of our posts on LinkedIn. It's more about the educational content type stuff. If we've presented something, if we won an award. And that's also another strategy that we haven't really touched on is when we started out, we wanted to build credibility. And so we obviously entered a few awards and were lucky enough to win some. That brought us great credibility, great content, able to share. So that also helped, I think, on the marketing side of things. That was actually a strategy that we had. Yeah, so that's what we use LinkedIn for. Instagram is around a personality. So you think to yourself, how can an accountant be on Instagram? Anything that you can put into a photo or a Canva graphic, you can put on Instagram. So we've put tax planning tips, Q&A, due dates. staff member profiles, little videos. If we're doing anything socially, we'll put some stuff on stories. Stories are kind of really booming at the moment. So that's what we use Instagram for. Facebook is kind of just consistent messaging, branding, all types of content, video, Q&A, blogs, sharing third party, what are we doing today type stuff. And Twitter, really, which was an interesting one. You wouldn't think you'd win a client through there. There's a kind of a group of accountants that are on Twitter fairly active.
Yeah.
And we were discussing something from an accounting tax perspective, and somebody must have just seen the feed to and from and loved our little play on things. And so we want a client from Twitter. So, and we don't necessarily brand or put content on Twitter. We're just on Twitter, being ourselves.
Yes, correct. and you're right. There are a group that, and I didn't know, probably only a couple of years ago, I thought, well, is Twitter back?
It's back. It's back, baby.
It's true, because I would have thought that as well. I thought, wow, there is a good, nice little group. And
I think what I've got the most from Twitter is the community connections, and especially during COVID, the community that we've been able to build through just getting to know each other on Twitter has actually changed parts of my career quite substantially, and I consider them great friends and colleagues, and there's actually a lot of power in that. And I think if you can tap into it and use it in the right way. There's also another one that we're not on, and I know Nat Lennon is, which is TikTok. I haven't gone down that. I haven't gone down that path. Look, it doesn't fit in our target market, if I'm going to be honest. We have considered it. And maybe at some point, if that target market changes, we might. But it's a really great way of delivering fun content. It's got to be a bit tongue-in-cheek at this point in time, but it's out there.
And I think that's let's call it the opportunity to, as we enter a new financial year pretty soon, the opportunity is to turn accounting into fun, where it hasn't necessarily been viewed that way.
Yeah, and I think when we started all in, we just wanted to be ourselves. I literally talked the corporate veil off. So in some ways, I push against the corporate veil because I want clients to be able to relate to me. I want it to be relational. I want to be a part of your business. And to do that, I have to be part of that. And so that's why we kind of made it a bit more fun, made it who we are. Sometimes we have great fun and sometimes we're serious, but whatever it is, it's really about empowerment of the client, and socials just help us communicate a story. It's storytelling.
Storytelling, and as parents, we know that what we do.
I love a great analogy, and so and I do lots of stories with my client, and I do lots of stories with my kids. My whole life is really storytelling, but that's where you engage people. That's the real power of the story. It's not delivering pieces of content, it's delivering a story.
Yeah, and that is so important. So hopefully all of our listeners, I'm going to maybe go to you for some parting advice very soon, because I know there are heaps of golden nuggets here, and hopefully you've got the ability to go back, or if you're in the car, you can get the video and watch it as well. If you haven't actually seen Aly, engage with her on All In Advisory.
Yeah, go on.
In the gym the other morning, she was pretty active in the gym. So she's got these little things that you find out.
This is the other thing I've done. I've opened up my life. So my Instagram is actually public. And what I share is a bit of family, a bit of work, and also a bit of what keeps me going, which is gym, right? It's that consistent, it's my mental health game. I share all parts of that because I want people to realize that it's not just one thing. We're made up of a million different things. Yeah. And so it's really around sharing my story.
Fantastic. And that's what I agree. I think when you can do that and you're open to that, you connect with people.
Yeah. And you have to and this is what I've learned, you have to give of yourself, and not everyone's going to love you, and that's okay. But it's about finding those people that do, the people that are the right fit, and that's clients, employees, and friends and family, right?
Spot on. So a parting piece of advice for all of our listeners?
Yeah, the consistent superhero. Consistency. If you're going to do something, be consistent at it. There is danger in stepping in and out of socials, of websites, of communication and marketing. There's danger in it. because you'll build this expectation where people say, oh, they're only going to be in it for a short period of time. You have to be consistent, and that means you have to prioritize it. It has to actually be a really important part of your journey. So I know when we get really, really busy, we have the same thing, tax planning, end of, year with lodgement dates. The tendency would be to that point, step back from marketing. That's where I think you actually need to lean into it and actually put it as a priority. It's not going to take long if you build a system and process behind it and have the right people to support you, either externally or internally. You can build that consistency, and that consistency is truly the superhero piece in this one.
Love it. So one more question from me. For people that are starting out or wanting to re-engage, fantastic consistency. But for people starting out, is one post a week, or what would you feel is,
Look, the stuff where we get the best engagement and the best role and the best being in front of somebody is 2 to 3
a week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of different types. And you can, as I said, you can schedule that in, like we schedule in a month's worth. And then if there's bits and pieces that come along, we'll stick it in. But we develop a month of content or a month of a social calendar based upon a theme, which seems to work for us.
Yeah, good.
And then the next time it'll be another theme. And then, that's just the way that it works for us. But 2 to 3 times builds front of mind. The amount of people that come in who are new clients and just asking you all over the socials, you're the first person that I thought of. That's the most common piece of feedback we get.
Brilliant. Love it. Thank you, Aly Garrett. Thank you for joining us again for our 2021 series of Talking Numbers. We did a little bit different this time, so I actually really enjoyed that. It was a lot more off the cuff, and I think it was really good. I always get the easy part of just asking the questions. But
I think my bit is the easy bit, answering them, so I'm cool. I usually have to put more prep into the actual interview stage. So all good. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure as always.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. This will go live pretty soon. So, awesome. And obviously look forward to having you. You spoke about women in accounting. We've got our Women in Accounting virtual lunch coming up in June as well. Pretty cool, where we get to celebrate a few more women in the accomplishments of what women are doing, and more importantly, just encouraging that next layer to come through. And I think that's what our industry needs.
Absolutely. Do you know what? Any platform that you provide, it's going to be stepped up on. And I'm so grateful that you guys are providing that platform. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for joining us again. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
Bye.